The crystal chandeliers hanging from the vaulted ceiling of the Grandeur Hotel ballroom cast a warm, golden glow across the polished marble floors. Each fixture was worth more than Clara Martinez had earned in the past 5 years combined, and there were at least 20 of them suspended above the sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. The air was thick with expensive perfume, the kind that came in bottles shaped like art pieces, mingling with the scent of imported roses that decorated every table in elaborate centerpieces. Clara pushed her cleaning cart along the periphery of the grand hall, her rubber-soled shoes making barely a whisper against the floor. She had perfected the art of being invisible over her 3 years working for premium event services. Move slowly. Keep your eyes down. Never make direct contact. Blend into the wallpaper. Become part of the furniture. Exist only as a shadow that occasionally refreshes a napkin or wipes away a spill. Tonight was the annual Westbridge Foundation Gala, a charity event that, ironically, Clara thought, raised money for underprivileged communities while requiring a $5,000 ticket to attend. The guest list read like a who's who of American high society: tech entrepreneurs, real estate moguls, entertainment industry executives, and old money families whose wealth traced back generations. "More champagne over here?" called a woman in a silver-sequined gown that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent. The woman didn't look at Clara as she passed with a tray, didn't acknowledge her existence beyond the utility she provided. Clara had grown accustomed to this. In rooms like these, people like her were mechanisms, not humans. They were the hands that kept the machine of luxury running smoothly, never worthy of a second glance. Clara paused near a marble column, using the brief moment to adjust the collar of her black uniform. The fabric was stiff and industrial, designed for function rather than comfort. At 32 years old, she had worked a dozen different jobs since dropping out of community college to care for her mother during her final illness. Each position had taught her the same lesson. In America, your value was determined by your bank account, your appearance, and your connections. Clara had none of these things. She was a size 18 in a world that celebrated size 0. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no styled waves or professional highlights. Her face, round and warm, bore no makeup beyond a touch of chapstick. She had learned long ago not to draw attention to herself. Attention, in her experience, led to comments. Comments led to humiliation. Humiliation led to tears she couldn't afford to shed during work hours. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed through the state-of-the-art sound system, "please welcome your host for this evening, Mr. Leonard Ashford." The room erupted in applause. Clara glanced up briefly, her hand still mechanically wiping down a side table that didn't need cleaning. Leonard Ashford emerged from a side entrance, and even from her position at the edge of the room, Clara could see why he commanded such attention. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with salt and pepper hair styled with calculated precision. His tuxedo fit him like it had been painted on, which it probably had been, custom-made by some exclusive tailor whose waiting list stretched years. But it wasn't his appearance that made Leonard Ashford intimidating. It was the aura of absolute control that surrounded him like an invisible force field. Leonard Ashford had built his fortune in commercial real estate, transforming struggling neighborhoods into profitable developments. The business magazines called him a visionary. The displaced residents of those neighborhoods called him something else, though never loud enough for him to hear. He was 53 years old, unmarried, and according to the tabloids that Clara sometimes glimpsed at the grocery store checkout, entirely uninterested in emotional attachments of any kind. "Thank you all for being here tonight." Leonard's voice was smooth, practiced, the product of years of public speaking. "Your generosity continues to make a difference in communities across our great nation. Tonight we're not just celebrating success, we're investing in futures." Clara felt a familiar tightness in her chest as she listened to the words, investing in futures. She wondered if any of these people had ever actually visited the communities they claimed to help. Had they walked through neighborhoods where children played on sidewalks cracked and broken? Had they spoken to single mothers working 3 jobs just to keep their lights on? Had they ever felt the particular shame of having to choose between buying medicine and buying groceries? "Clara, we need you in the East Corridor." Someone spilled red wine on the carpet near the silent auction tables. The voice crackled through the small radio clipped to Clara's belt. She pressed the button to respond. "On my way." As she maneuvered her cart through the service entrance, Clara passed by the kitchen where the catering staff worked in controlled chaos. The head chef was barking orders in French, and the sous chefs moved with choreographed precision. plating delicacies that cost more per bite than Clara's entire dinner budget for a week. "Hey, Clara." Maria, one of the servers, caught her arm as she passed. Maria was 24, studying nursing at night while working events during the day. She was one of the few people in this world who actually saw Clara as a person. "You okay? You look tired." "Always tired." Clara smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "But bills don't pay themselves, right?" "Truth." Maria squeezed her hand. "Listen, save me a piece of whatever dessert's left over, okay? I haven't eaten since breakfast." "You got it." The wine stain in the east corridor was exactly as bad as Clara had feared. A deep burgundy splash across cream-colored carpet already setting in. She sighed, got down on her knees, and began the careful process of blotting and treating the stain. Above her, guests walked past, their conversations floating over her head like birds she couldn't reach. "Did you see Jennifer's dress? Absolutely tragic. The Hamptons house is finally finished. You must come visit this summer. My son just got accepted to Harvard. We're so proud." Clara worked methodically, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. She had become an expert at removing the evidence of other people's carelessness. Wine stains, food spills, the occasional lipstick mark on a champagne glass. She erased them all, leaving no trace that perfection had ever been disturbed. By the time she finished, her knees ached, and her lower back had begun its familiar evening protest. She was pushing her cart back toward the ballroom when the music started. A live orchestra, 15 pieces, began playing a waltz. Through the open doors, Clara could see couples taking to the dance floor, moving together in elegant synchronization. She paused just for a moment, watching. There was something beautiful about it, she had to admit. The way the women's gowns flowed like water, the way the men guided their partners with confident hands, the way everyone seemed to know exactly where they belonged in the choreography of wealth and privilege. Clara's mother had loved to dance. In their tiny apartment in Brooklyn, when money was especially tight and spirits were especially low, her mother would put on old records and dance around the living room. "Music is free, mija," she would say in her accented English, pulling Clara into an awkward waltz. "No one can take this from us." But her mother had been wrong. Death had taken it. Illness had stolen the music from her mother's life one painful day at a time, until there was nothing left but silence and medical bills that still haunted Clara's credit report. "Excuse me, could you dispose of this?" A young woman, barely out of college by the look of her, thrust a plate of half-eaten food toward Clara without making eye contact. The girl was beautiful in that effortless way that money could buy. Perfect teeth, perfect skin, perfect hair that had probably required 3 hours and $300 to achieve. "Of course." Clara took the plate, adding it to her cart. "The shrimp was disappointing," the girl said to her companion, a young man in a tuxedo who looked equally bored. "I expected better from Ashford. His events are usually impeccable." They walked away, already forgetting Clara existed. She stared down at the plate. Half a dozen jumbo shrimp barely touched, probably $40 worth of food headed for the trash. Clara's stomach growled quietly. She had eaten a peanut butter sandwich for lunch 6 hours ago. "All staff to the main ballroom." The radio crackled again. "Mr. Ashford is about to make his keynote speech." Clara positioned herself near her designated station at the back of the room, close to the service entrance, but with a clear view of the stage. It was part of her job to be available, to be ready to address any need that might arise during important moments. Leonard Ashford took the stage again, and this time the room fell into complete silence. He commanded attention in a way that seemed almost supernatural, though Clara knew it was just the power of wealth and confidence combined. "Tonight I want to talk about visibility," Leonard began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the space. "About seeing and being seen. About recognizing value in unexpected places." Clara felt her attention sharpen despite herself. There was something in his tone, something that felt different from the usual philanthropic platitudes. "We live in a world," Leonard continued, "where we've become experts at looking without truly seeing. We pass by thousands of people every day, and how many of them do we actually notice? How many of them do we recognize as fully human, with dreams and struggles and stories as complex as our own?" The room remained silent, hanging on his words. Clara felt a strange flutter in her chest. Was he really saying what she thought he was saying? The invisible people of our society, the ones who clean our offices, serve our meals, care for our children, maintain our infrastructure, they're not invisible because they're not worth seeing. They're invisible because we've trained ourselves not to look. Clara's heart was beating faster now. She glanced around the room, seeing some guests nodding thoughtfully, others looking vaguely uncomfortable, shifting in their expensive shoes. "So tonight I challenge each of you," Leonard's eyes swept across the crowd, "to see someone you've never truly seen before, to recognize that value isn't measured in dollars or status, but in the inherent worth of every human being." The applause was polite, but uncertain. Clara could tell that some guests appreciated the sentiment while others found it vaguely accusatory. She felt a confusing mix of emotions, hope that maybe, just maybe, someone in this room might actually change their behavior, and cynicism born from years of experience that told her words were cheap and change was rare. The orchestra started up again, and couples returned to the dance floor. Clara began her rounds once more, collecting empty glasses, wiping down surfaces, existing in the margins of other people's joy. She was clearing a table near the edge of the dance floor when she heard it, a conversation between two men in tuxedos, both holding whiskey glasses, and watching the dancers with predatory eyes. "What about her?" one said, gesturing with his glass toward a young woman in a red dress. "Too thin," the other replied. "I like a woman with some substance." "Not too much substance, though," the first man laughed. "Nobody wants to dance with someone who doesn't look good in photos." They both laughed, and Clara felt her face flush hot. She knew they weren't talking about her. She wasn't even on their radar as a woman, just as part of the furniture, but the casual cruelty of their words struck her like a physical blow. She had heard variations of this conversation her entire life. In high school, when she was passed over for school dances. In college, during the brief semester she attended before dropping out, when study groups somehow never had room for her. At family gatherings where well-meaning relatives would ask when she planned to take care of herself and find a nice man, as if her worth began and ended with her appearance, as if she was less deserving of love, respect, and basic human dignity, because her body didn't conform to a narrow standard of beauty that had been sold to the world by industries that profited from women's insecurities. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she stacked glasses on her tray. She could feel tears threatening at the corners of her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. Not here. Not now. She couldn't afford to break down during work. She needed this job. She needed every shift, every hour, every dollar. "You there, cleaning lady?" Clara looked up. A woman in her 50s, dripping in diamonds, was beckoning her with one perfectly manicured finger. "Yes, ma'am? The ladies' room needs attention. I noticed the hand soap was running low. I'll take care of it right away." As Clara headed toward the restroom, she caught a glimpse of herself in one of the many mirrors lining the hallway. She looked tired, old beyond her years. The uniform did her no favors, and her face was shiny with perspiration from hours of work. The woman looking back at her from the mirror was a stranger, a person she barely recognized anymore. When had she stopped being Clara Martinez, the girl who sang in the church choir and dreamed of studying music? When had she become just another invisible body moving through spaces where she didn't belong? The bathroom was as opulent as the rest of the venue. Marble countertops, gold fixtures, real towels instead of paper. Clara refilled the soap dispensers, her movements automatic. She could hear laughter from the ballroom, music filtering through the walls. Another world, so close she could touch it, yet forever beyond her reach. When she returned to the ballroom, the energy had shifted. People were slightly drunk now, inhibitions lowered by champagne and wine. The dancing had become more enthusiastic, less controlled. Clara navigated through it all, a ghost in a world of the living. She was near the main stage, picking up discarded napkins, when she heard Leonard Ashford's voice again. He was standing with a small group of his peers, business associates by the look of them, all men of similar age and status. "Leonard, this has been a wonderful evening," one of them said. "You've outdone yourself." "Thank you, Richard. Though I have to say, the real success isn't measured by how much we've enjoyed ourselves, but by how much we've raised for the foundation." "Always the businessman?" Another man laughed. "Can't you just relax and enjoy the party?" "I am enjoying it," Leonard replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "I just think we could do more. Be more." "More?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Leonard, we're already doing more than most. We're here, aren't we? We're writing checks." "Checks are easy," Leonard said quietly. "Actually seeing people? Actually changing how we move through the world? That's harder." The conversation dissolved as someone else approached to congratulate Leonard on the event. Clara continued her work, but her mind was turning over his words. She had been so certain that his speech was just performance, Just another wealthy person performing awareness without actually committing to change. But there had been something in his voice just now, a hint of genuine dissatisfaction, of someone recognizing the limits of their own impact. The night wore on. 10 o'clock became 11. 11 became midnight. Clara's feet ached in her sensible shoes. Her back was a constant throb of pain. But the event was winding down, and that meant her shift was almost over. She was making one final round of the ballroom, collecting the last abandoned glasses and plates when it happened. A group of young men, clearly intoxicated, had gathered near the edge of the dance floor. They were watching the few remaining couples dance, making comments, and laughing among themselves. Clara tried to pass by unnoticed, but one of them stepped backward directly into her path. "Whoa," he exclaimed as he bumped into her cart, causing several glasses to rattle dangerously. "Watch where you're going." "I'm sorry, sir," Clara said automatically, even though he had backed into her. "You should be more careful," another one of the men said. "You could have caused an accident." Clara kept her head down, starting to move away, but the first man wasn't done. "Hey, wait a minute," he said, and there was something in his voice that made Clara's stomach tighten with dread. "Why don't you join the party? Everyone else is dancing, why shouldn't you?" His friends laughed, and Clara realized with sinking horror that she had become their entertainment. "I'm working, sir, I need to—" "Oh, come on." The man reached for her arm, and Clara instinctively pulled back. "Just one dance. Unless—" He looked at his friends with exaggerated realization. "Unless nobody's asked you to dance, is that the problem?" The laughter was louder now, drawing attention from other guests. Clara felt her face burning, felt her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, to be anywhere but here. "Leave her alone, guys," one of the men said, but he was laughing too, undercutting any authority his words might have had. Clara found her voice, though it came out smaller than she wanted, less certain than she felt. "No one dances with a fat girl, sir," she said, the words tasting like poison on her tongue. "But I can sing to liven up the party." She didn't know why she said it. Maybe it was the exhaustion talking. Maybe it was years of pent-up frustration finally finding a voice. Maybe it was her mother's spirit, the woman who had always told her that music was power, that her voice was a gift no one could take away. The room didn't fall silent. It was too large, too crowded for that, but in the immediate vicinity, conversation stopped. Heads turned. Clara stood there, exposed and vulnerable, immediately regretting her words. What had she been thinking? Now she'd be fired for certain. She'd humiliated herself in front of hundreds of people, and for what? The men who had been tormenting her were staring at her with a mixture of surprise and mockery. One of them opened his mouth to say something, probably something cutting and cruel that would haunt her for months. But before he could speak, another voice cut through the moment. "Then sing." Clara's head snapped up. Leonard Ashford was standing 10 feet away, his gray eyes fixed directly on her. Not through her, not past her, but on her. He was looking at her, really looking at her, and his expression was unreadable. "I'm sorry?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Leonard Ashford took a step closer, and the crowd parted for him like water around a ship. "You said you can sing. So sing." He turned to address the room at large, his voice carrying with absolute authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more performance tonight. Everyone, please, give this woman your attention." The orchestra had stopped playing. The entire ballroom was watching now. Hundreds of pairs of eyes all focused on Clara. She felt dizzy, felt like she might actually faint. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. But Leonard Ashford was extending his hand toward her, gesturing toward the stage where he had delivered his speeches earlier. And in his eyes she saw something she hadn't expected. Not pity, not mockery, but genuine curiosity. He actually wanted to hear her sing. Clara's hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab her cart and flee through the service entrance and never look back. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she had tried to bury under years of rejection and invisibility, her mother's voice whispered, "Music is free, mija. No one can take this from us." Clara took a step forward, then another. The crowd parted for her too, though not with the same reverence they showed Leonard. Their faces showed everything: curiosity, confusion, amusement, anticipation of watching someone fail spectacularly. She reached the stage. The stairs seemed impossibly tall. Leonard Ashford was beside her now, his presence commanding and somehow, unexpectedly, reassuring. "What's your name?" he asked quietly, just for her. "Clara," she whispered. "Clara Martinez." "Clara?" he repeated. And the way he said it, like it mattered, like she mattered, nearly broke her. Show them who you are. He gestured to the microphone standing at center stage. Clara looked at it, then at the sea of faces watching her. This was the moment that would either vindicate her courage or confirm every cruel thing she'd ever believed about herself. She stepped forward, her hands reaching for the microphone, her heart thundering in her chest, and everything changed. Clara's hand closed around the microphone stand, and the cool metal sent a shock through her system that was almost electric. The stage lights were brighter than she had imagined, hot against her face, turning the audience into a sea of shadowy figures punctuated by the occasional glint of jewelry or champagne glass. Her mind was racing. What song should she sing? She hadn't prepared for this. She hadn't sung in public since her mother's funeral 3 years ago, when she had stood beside the casket and delivered a trembling rendition of Ave Maria that had left half the small congregation in tears. The silence stretched out, becoming uncomfortable. She could hear whispers beginning to ripple through the crowd. Someone coughed. Someone else laughed. A short, nervous sound that felt like a blade against her skin. Leonard Ashford had stepped back, giving her space, but he remained close to the stage. His eyes hadn't left her face. There was something in his expression that Clara couldn't quite read. Expectation, yes, but also something deeper. Almost like he needed her to succeed as much as she did. Clara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she looked past the crowd, past the opulent ballroom, past the present moment entirely. She thought of her mother, dancing in their tiny apartment. She thought of Sunday mornings in the church choir, when her voice would soar above the others and people would turn to see where that sound was coming from. She thought of every time someone had made her feel small, had treated her as less than, had looked through her as if she didn't exist, and she began to sing. The song that emerged from her lips was Hallelujah, not the religious version, but Leonard Cohen's secular meditation on love and loss and the beautiful brokenness of being human. It was a bold choice, perhaps too bold, but it was the song that lived in her heart in this moment. Her voice started soft, almost uncertain, and she could feel the audience's skepticism like a physical weight. But as she moved into the second line, something shifted. Her voice grew stronger, more confident, filling the vast space of the ballroom with a richness that seemed impossible from someone so thoroughly dismissed by the world. Clara had what vocal coaches called a true contralto, a rare female voice type, deep and warm and resonant. It was the kind of voice that didn't just carry a melody but inhabited it, made it flesh and blood and aching humanity. As a child, music teachers had marveled at it. As an adult, it had become just another part of herself that she had learned to hide away, to make small, to apologize for. But not tonight. Tonight, with nothing left to lose and everything to prove, Clara let her voice be exactly what it was: powerful, undeniable, magnificent. The room had gone absolutely still. Not the uncomfortable silence of before, but the reverent hush of people encountering something unexpected and profound. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, frozen in place with their trays and bottles. Clara sang of broken hallelujahs and cold and lonely nights. She sang of love that lifts you up and love that brings you crashing down. She sang with every ounce of pain and hope and defiance that she had accumulated over 32 years of being told, in 1,000 subtle and not so subtle ways, that she was not enough. When she reached the final chorus, her voice climbed and swelled, filling every corner of the ballroom, reaching into the hearts of people who had spent the entire evening carefully guarding their emotions behind walls of wealth and status. She held the final note, letting it ring out clear and pure before releasing it gently into silence. For 3 full seconds, no one moved, no one breathed, and then the applause began. It started with Leonard Ashford, his hands coming together in slow, deliberate claps. Then Maria, the server who had spoken to Clara earlier, joined in from her position near the kitchen entrance. Then someone else, and someone else, until the entire ballroom erupted in thunderous applause. Clara stood at the microphone, stunned. People were on their feet, a standing ovation. For her, for Clara Martinez, the invisible cleaning lady. Several people were wiping their eyes. A woman in an emerald gown was openly crying. Clara's legs felt weak. The adrenaline that had carried her through the performance was draining away, leaving her shaky and uncertain. She took a step back from the microphone, unsure of what to do next. Should she bow? Should she just leave? No one had taught her the protocol for moments like this. Leonard Ashford saved her from the decision by stepping onto the stage beside her. He took her hand, his palm warm and dry against her nervous, sweaty one, and raised it above their heads like a boxing referee declaring a winner. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed across the sound system, "Clara Martinez." The applause intensified. Clara felt tears spilling down her cheeks, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Let them see, she thought. Let them see that I'm human, that I have feelings, that I exist. As the applause finally began to die down, Leonard guided Clara off the stage, his hand still holding hers. He led her away from the main ballroom, through a side door, into a quiet corridor that Clara recognized as the one leading to the hotel's executive offices. "Wait here," Leonard said gently, releasing her hand. "I'll be right back." He disappeared back through the door, leaving Clara alone in the hallway. She leaned against the wall, her heart still racing, her mind trying to process what had just happened. Had that really just occurred? Had she really just sung in front of hundreds of wealthy strangers? Had they really applauded for her? The door opened again, and Maria burst through, her server's uniform slightly disheveled, her face alight with joy. "Clara! Oh my God, Clara!" Maria grabbed her in a fierce hug. "That was incredible. I didn't know you could sing like that. I haven't sung in years," Clara admitted, her voice hoarse now that the performance was over. "Not since my mom died." "Well, you need to sing more." Maria pulled back, holding Clara at arm's length. I don't even have words. You made half the room cry, including some people who I'm pretty sure haven't cried since they were children." "I can't believe I did that," Clara said, and a laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her, slightly hysterical but genuine. "Maria, I think I might have just ruined my career. They're going to fire me for sure." "Are you kidding? After that performance?" Maria shook her head firmly. "If they fire you, I'll quit too. We all will." The entire catering staff was watching from the kitchen, and we all agreed. That was the most real thing that's happened at one of these events in forever. The door opened again, and this time Leonard returned, accompanied by an older gentleman in an expensive suit whom Clara recognized as Richard, one of Leonard's business associates from earlier. "Clara," Leonard said, "this is Richard Pemberton. He's on the board of the Westbridge Foundation, and he'd like to speak with you." Richard extended his hand, and Clara shook it, acutely aware of how rough her hands must feel compared to his soft, manicured ones. "Ms. Martinez, that was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. Have you had professional training?" "Some," Clara said hesitantly. "I was in choir growing up. I took a few voice lessons in high school, but I couldn't afford to continue after graduation." "What a waste," Richard said, and there was genuine regret in his voice. "A voice like yours should be shared with the world, not hidden away." "I work," Clara said simply. "I have bills to pay. Singing doesn't pay bills." "It could," Leonard interjected, and there was an intensity in his voice that made Clara look at him sharply. "It absolutely could, with the right opportunities." "Leonard," Richard said carefully, "are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" "I am." Leonard turned to face Clara fully. "Ms. Martinez, Clara, what if I told you that tonight doesn't have to end with you going back to being invisible? What if I told you that we could change your life, if you're willing to let us try?" Clara felt her stomach drop. This sounded too good to be true, which in her experience meant it definitely was too good to be true. "What do you mean?" "The Westbridge Foundation supports various initiatives, including arts education and community programs," Leonard explained. "One of our projects involves providing music education to underprivileged youth. We've been looking for someone to lead the program, someone who understands both the technical aspects of music and the lived experience of the communities we serve." "You want me to teach?" Clara asked, her mind struggling to keep up. "I want you to do more than teach," Leonard said. "I want you to be the voice of the program, literally and figuratively. You'd work with students, yes, but you'd also perform at fundraising events, represent the foundation at public appearances, and help us create authentic connections with the communities we claim to serve." Clara's heart was pounding again, but for an entirely different reason now. "I don't understand. Why me? You don't know anything about me. I'm just a cleaning lady who happened to sing one song." "You're not just anything," Leonard said, and the firmness in his voice surprised her. "That song wasn't just a performance, it was a revelation. You have a gift, Clara, and gifts like that don't come along often. More importantly, you have authenticity. You understand what it means to be overlooked, to be dismissed, to be treated as invisible. That understanding is invaluable. But I'm not qualified, Clara protested. I don't have a degree. I dropped out of college. I don't have any experience running programs or speaking in public or you just spoke to a room of 400 people with more power and conviction than most professional speakers manage. Richard interrupted. As for qualifications, we can provide training, mentorship, support. What we can't provide is what you already have. Genuine connection to the mission. Clara looked at Maria, who was grinning so wide it looked painful. Take it, Maria urged. Clara, take it. This is your chance. I need to think, Clara said, feeling overwhelmed. This is all happening so fast. An hour ago, I was cleaning up wine stains and now you're offering me, what, a job? A career? Take the weekend, Leonard said. Think about it. Talk to people you trust. But Clara, I'm serious about this offer. We're serious about this offer. The salary would be $60,000 a year to start, with benefits and opportunities for growth. $60,000. Clara's current salary was $28,000. $60,000 would mean she could finally pay off her mother's medical debt. She could move out of the basement apartment with the mold problem. She could buy a car that didn't break down every other month. But more than that, and this thought almost frightened her with its intensity, she could sing again. She could make music part of her life again. Not just a memory of better times, but an actual living reality. I don't know what to say, Clara whispered. Say you'll consider it, Leonard said. That's all I ask. Before Clara could respond, the door to the hallway burst open and one of the young men from earlier, one of the ones who had mocked her, stumbled through. He was clearly drunk, his bow tie undone, his hair disheveled. Ashford, he called out, not noticing Clara at first. There you are. Come back to the party. Everyone's asking about your cleaning lady singer. They want an encore. He finally focused on Clara, and a sloppy grin spread across his face. Oh, hey, it's you. That was actually pretty good, you know. For someone who... He paused, seeming to search for words that were slipping through his alcohol-soaked brain. For someone unexpected. That's enough, Trevor. Leonard's voice was ice cold. Go back to the party. Aw, come on, Leonard. I'm just saying she surprised us all. Nobody expected the help to have such talent. Trevor laughed at his own words, oblivious to the tension in the hallway. The help, Leonard repeated slowly, and there was something dangerous in his tone now. Trevor, do you realize what you just did? Do you have any idea how disrespectful that was? Trevor blinked, confused. What? I complimented her. You reduced her to her job title while claiming to praise her, Richard said, his own voice hardening. That's not a compliment. That's condescension wrapped in a bow. Clara wanted to disappear again. This was exactly what she had feared, being turned into a spectacle, a moment of entertainment for people who would never see her as an equal. It's fine, she said quietly. I should get back to work anyway. No, Leonard said firmly. It's not fine and you're not going back to work tonight. Your shift is over. He turned to Trevor. And you're going to apologize to Ms. Martinez? Or you're going to leave this event right now. Trevor looked between Leonard and Clara, his drunken smile fading as he realized this was serious. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I didn't mean anything by it. Apology noted, but not particularly convincing, Leonard said. Now leave. After Trevor had stumbled back through the door, Leonard turned to Clara with an expression that might have been embarrassment. I apologize for that. Not all of our guests understand basic human decency, apparently. It's what I'm used to, Clara said, and the flatness in her own voice surprised her. People like him? That's my daily reality. That's what I was trying to tell you with my comment earlier. In this world, in these spaces, I'm not really a person. I'm a function. And one song, no matter how well received, isn't going to change that. You're wrong, Leonard said, and the intensity was back in his voice. It can change. It has to change. But only if people like you are willing to stand up and be seen. Only if you're willing to take up space and demand to be treated with dignity. Easy for you to say, Clara shot back, and she felt a spark of anger now. Good, clean anger that felt better than resignation. You've never had to worry about being invisible. You've never had to apologize for existing. You've never had your worth determined by how you look or what you can do for other people. You're right, Leonard said, and his admission surprised her. I haven't experienced what you've experienced, but I've watched it happen. I've been complicit in it. And tonight, watching you stand on that stage and claim your power, it made me realize how much I've been a part of the problem. There was something raw in his voice, something genuine that cut through Clara's anger. She studied his face, looking for signs of performance or manipulation, but all she saw was honest reflection. "Why does this matter to you?" she asked. "Really? Because I don't believe this is just about filling a position at your foundation." Leonard was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more vulnerable than she had heard it all evening. 3 months ago, my mother passed away. She was 81, had lived a full life, had everything money could buy. And in her final days, you know what she told me? She said that in all her years of wealth and privilege, the only people who had truly seen her, truly valued her as a human being, were the nurses and aides who cared for her. Not her society friends, not her family if I'm being honest, but the people who cleaned her room and helped her eat and held her hand when she was afraid. He paused, his jaw working as he controlled his emotions. She made me promise that I would do better, that I would use my resources to actually see people, not just write checks and pat myself on back for being charitable. And tonight, when you said what you said, about no one dancing with you but being able to sing, it was like I heard my mother's voice again, challenging me to actually do something meaningful. Clara felt her own eyes welling up. This was not what she had expected. She had expected pity or savior complex or wealthy guilt. But this felt like genuine connection. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared that if I take this opportunity, I'll fail, that I'll prove everyone right whoever said I wasn't good enough, that I'll lose everything and end up worse off than before." "Fear is reasonable," Leonard said. "Fear is smart. But let me ask you something. Are you more scared of trying and possibly failing, or of never trying at all and spending the rest of your life wondering what might have been?" Clara thought of her mother, dancing in their tiny apartment. She thought of all the dreams she had buried under the weight of survival and bills and exhaustion. She thought of how it had felt to stand on that stage tonight, to let her voice be heard, to matter. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "I'll really think about it, but I need time." "Take all the time you need." Leonard pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. "My personal number is on there. Call me Monday, or call me next week, or call me next month. The offer stands." Maria, who had been quietly watching this entire exchange, squeezed Clara's shoulder. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's get you out of here. You've had enough for one night." As they walked back toward the service entrance, Clara clutched the business card in her hand. Behind her, she could hear the party continuing, music and laughter floating through the ornate hallways. But something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer moving through these spaces as a ghost. She had been seen, she had been heard, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat in her small basement apartment in Queens, the business card on the coffee table in front of her, just staring at it as the hours ticked by. The card was heavy stock, embossed lettering that caught the dim light from her single lamp. "Leonard Ashford," it read, with a phone number and an email address. Simple, elegant, expensive. Outside her window, half below ground level, she could see feet passing by on the sidewalk. Just feet, never faces. It was a perspective she had grown accustomed to over the past 4 years in this apartment, a view that reminded her daily of her place in the world. Her phone buzzed. It was Maria, texting for the 3rd time since they'd parted ways at the subway station around 2 in the morning. "Girl, are you still awake? Have you decided yet?" Clara typed back, "Can't sleep, can't think straight. This doesn't feel real." The response came immediately. "It is real. I was there. Everyone was there. You changed that whole room tonight." Clara set her phone down and walked to the tiny bathroom, flipping on the light that flickered before stabilizing. She looked at herself in the mirror, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. Her face was puffy from crying. Her eyes were red. Her hair was still pulled back in the same ponytail from work, now limp and flat. This was not the face of someone who performed for millionaires. This was not the face of someone who ran programs and represented foundations and changed lives. This was the face of someone who scrubbed toilets and picked up other people's garbage and apologized for existing. Except tonight, she hadn't apologized. Tonight she had claimed space. She had used her voice, literally, to demand to be seen. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Maria. It was an unknown number. "Ms. Martinez, this is Richard Pemberton. I hope you don't mind that Leonard gave me your contact information. I wanted to reach out personally to tell you that in my 40 years of attending charity galas, I have never witnessed a moment as powerful as what you created tonight. Whatever you decide about Leonard's offer, please know that you have a gift that deserves to be shared with the world. Warmest regards, RP. Clara read the message 3 times. A man she had never met before tonight, a man who moved in circles so far above her own that they might as well be different planets, had taken time at 2:30 in the morning to send her this message. She thought about her mother again. Rosa Martinez had cleaned houses for wealthy families in Manhattan for 20 years. She had raised Clara alone after Clara's father left when she was 2. Rosa had worked 60-hour weeks, had sacrificed everything, had never complained. But sometimes, late at night when she thought Clara was asleep, Rosa would sit at their tiny kitchen table and cry quietly. And once, when Clara was 16 and came out to get water, she had heard her mother whisper to herself in Spanish, "¿Cuándo será suficiente?" When will I be enough? Clara had never forgotten that. The ache in her mother's voice, the bone-deep weariness of someone who had worked her entire life and still felt invisible, still felt less than, still felt like she had to prove her worth with every breath. "I'm going to do it," Clara said out loud to her empty apartment. "Mama, I'm going to do it." Monday morning arrived with autumn rain, the kind that turned New York City gray and made everything feel heavy. Clara had called in sick to work, the first time she had done so in over 2 years. She sat at her kitchen table, Leonard's business card in front of her, her phone in her hand. She had practiced what she would say, had written it down even on a piece of notebook paper. But now, with her finger hovering over the dial button, all her practiced words seemed to evaporate. She pressed the number before she could talk herself out of it. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Maybe he wouldn't answer. Maybe this was all a dream and she would wake up and... "Clara?" Leonard's voice came through, warm and alert despite the early hour. "I was hoping you'd call." "Mr. Ashford," Clara began, her voice shaking slightly. "I've thought about your offer." And there was no pressure in his voice, just genuine curiosity. "I want to say yes," Clara said, the words coming out in a rush. "But I need to understand what this really means. I need to know that this is real and not just some impulse you had because of one performance." "That's fair," Leonard said. "Are you free this morning? I'd like to meet with you properly. Not at a gala, not in a hallway, but in my office where we can discuss this thoroughly. I want you to understand exactly what we're offering and what would be expected of you." 2 hours later, Clara found herself in Midtown Manhattan, standing in front of a gleaming skyscraper that housed Ashford Properties and the Westbridge Foundation. She had changed clothes 3 times before leaving her apartment, finally settling on a simple gray dress and black cardigan, the nicest outfit she owned that wasn't her work uniform. The lobby was all marble and glass, with a security desk that looked like it cost more than her annual salary. Clara approached hesitantly, feeling completely out of place. "I'm here to see Leonard Ashford," she told the security guard, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "My name is Clara Martinez." The guard checked his computer, then smiled. "Ah yes, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Ashford is expecting you. Take the elevator to the 32nd floor. Someone will meet you there." The elevator ride felt like ascending into another world. The doors opened onto a reception area that was elegant but not ostentatious. Comfortable leather chairs, real plants, artwork that looked original. A young woman in professional attire greeted her immediately. "Ms. Martinez, welcome. I'm Jennifer, Mr. Ashford's executive assistant. He's ready for you. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, water?" "Water would be nice," Clara said, her mouth suddenly dry. Jennifer led her down a hallway to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Leonard stood as she entered, and Clara was struck by how different he looked in this context. Still commanding, still confident, but somehow more human. He was in shirt sleeves, his tie loosened, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Clara, thank you for coming." He gestured to a seating area away from his desk, 2 sofas facing each other across a coffee table. "Please sit. Make yourself comfortable." As they settled in and Jennifer brought water, Leonard pulled out a folder from the coffee table. "I want to be completely transparent with you about what this position would entail. No surprises, no hidden expectations." Over the next hour, Leonard laid out the details. The position was called Community Arts Director for the Westbridge Foundation. Clara would be responsible for developing and overseeing a music education program for underserved youth in 5 boroughs of New York City. She would work with schools, community centers, and local organizations to identify students who would benefit from the program. "But here's the part that's non-negotiable," Leonard said, looking at her intently. "You would also be the public face of this initiative. That means performing at fundraising events, speaking about the program at conferences and board meetings, doing media interviews if the opportunity arises. You would be representing not just the foundation, but the communities we serve. I've never done any of that, Clara admitted. Public speaking, media interviews, that's not my world. Which is exactly why you're perfect for it, Leonard countered. People are tired of polished PR representatives who've been media trained to say nothing meaningful. They want authenticity. They want someone who understands the real challenges facing these communities because she's lived them. But what if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing? Or then you'll be human, Leonard interrupted gently. Clara, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for truth, your truth. The foundation has been running programs for 10 years, and we've had limited success because we've been doing it all wrong. We've been imposing solutions from the outside instead of empowering voices from within. You can change that. Clara was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked the question that had been nagging at her since Saturday night. Why music? Why not education more broadly, or job training, or any number of other programs? Leonard's expression shifted, became more personal. Because music saved my life when I was young. My father was difficult, demanding. Nothing I did was ever good enough. But when I played piano, it was the only time I felt like I could breathe. The only time I felt like I had value beyond what I could achieve or acquire. He paused, looking out the window at the city below. I stopped playing when I went into business. My father convinced me it was impractical, a waste of time. And I built an empire, made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I lost something essential. Music gave me a voice when I felt voiceless. I want to give that gift to kids who feel the same way. Clara felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't about charity or tax write-offs or good PR. This was personal for him. Real. There's something I need to tell you, Clara said slowly. I'm not just a cleaning lady who happens to sing. Music was my whole life once. I was in advanced choir in high school, won some regional competitions, got accepted to a community college music program. But when my mom got sick, I had to drop out. The medical bills, the care she needed, there was no way I could keep studying. She took a breath, surprised by how much it still hurt to say out loud. I told myself it was temporary, that once she got better, I'd go back. But she didn't get better. She died owing $70,000 to various hospitals and doctors. And I've spent the last 3 years working multiple jobs just to keep the debt collectors from destroying my credit completely. I'm sorry, Leonard said. And the simplicity of those words, without platitudes or false comfort, meant more than he probably knew. The point is, Clara continued, I gave up music once because I had to survive. What happens if I take this job and the foundation loses funding, or the board decides to go in a different direction, or you retire and your replacement has other priorities? I'll have given up a steady job, a job I'm good at, even if it's not glamorous, for something that might disappear. Those are legitimate concerns, Leonard acknowledged. I can't guarantee that this position will exist forever. What I can guarantee is that for as long as I'm running this foundation, which will be at least the next 10 years, this program will be a priority. I'll put that in writing in your contract, and I'll make sure you have professional development opportunities so that even if, worst-case scenario, this doesn't work out, you'll have skills and credentials that transfer to other positions. He leaned forward, his gray eyes serious. But Clara, here's what I really want you to understand. You are not giving up security for a dream. You're trading one kind of security, the security of knowing exactly how small your life will be, for a different kind, the security of knowing you tried, that you didn't let fear make your decisions for you. Clara felt tears prickling at her eyes again. When had she become someone who cried so easily? But maybe that was part of this, remembering how to feel things fully instead of numbing herself to get through each day. Can I ask you something personal? She said. Of course. That speech you gave Saturday night about seeing people who are invisible, did you mean it? Or was that just a nice sentiment for the cameras? Leonard was quiet for a long moment. 6 months ago, I would have said I meant it while not really understanding what it meant. I would have written a check and felt good about myself. But something has been changing in me lately. Maybe it's getting older. Maybe it's losing my mother. Maybe it's just finally having enough money that I can't avoid asking what the point of all this is. He gestured around the office. But Clara understood he meant more than just the room. I've spent 30 years building an empire, and I'm realizing that empire is meaningless if it's built on making other people invisible. So, yes, I meant it, and I'm trying to figure out how to actually live it. This program, this position, working with you, it's part of that process. There was a vulnerability in his admission that Clara hadn't expected. She had assumed Leonard Ashford had all the answers, that his confidence came from certainty. But he was figuring this out too, trying to be better, trying to do better. "I'll take the job," Clara said, and as the words left her mouth, she felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. "I don't know if I'll be any good at it, and I'm probably going to need a lot of help, but I'll take it." Leonard's face broke into a genuine smile, the first she had seen from him that reached all the way to his eyes. "You're going to be better than good. You're going to be extraordinary." They spent the next hour going over practical details. Start date, salary, benefits, office location. Clara would have her own workspace at the Foundation's offices, a budget for the program, and a small team to help with logistics and administration. "There's one more thing," Leonard said as their meeting was winding down. "I want you to perform at our next fundraising event in 3 weeks. It's a smaller gathering than the gala, about 100 people, all major donors. I want them to hear you sing and understand why this program matters." Clara's stomach dropped. 3 weeks? That's so soon. I know, but I also know that if we wait too long, fear will creep back in. Strike while the iron is hot, as they say. He smiled encouragingly. "Besides, you've already proved you can do this. Saturday night was the hard part. You were unprepared, put on the spot, performing for a hostile audience. This will be easier." Clara wasn't sure she believed that, but she nodded anyway. "What would you want me to sing?" "Whatever speaks to you. Whatever tells the story you want to tell. I trust your judgment." As Clara rode the elevator back down to street level, her mind was spinning. She had just accepted a job that would completely change her life. She was going to be working in an office, developing programs, speaking in public, performing at events. It was everything she had stopped letting herself want years ago. Outside, the rain had stopped and weak autumn sunlight was breaking through the clouds. Clara pulled out her phone and called Maria. "I did it," she said when Maria answered. "I took the job." Maria screamed so loudly that Clara had to hold the phone away from her ear. When the screaming subsided, Maria said, "I'm so proud of you. When do you start?" 2 weeks. I have to give notice at premium events. They're going to lose their minds when you quit. You're one of their best workers. I'm also completely replaceable to them," Clara said. But for the first time, there was no bitterness in the observation, just fact. "But that's okay. I'm choosing to be irreplaceable somewhere else." That evening, Clara sat down and wrote her resignation letter. It was short, professional, giving the standard 2 weeks' notice. She didn't explain where she was going or why. She didn't owe them her story. The next morning, she handed the letter to her supervisor, a perpetually harried woman named Susan who barely looked up from her clipboard. "Oh," Susan said, scanning the letter quickly. "That's unfortunate. You're a reliable worker. Can I ask why you're leaving?" "I've been offered a position at a foundation," Clara said simply. "It's a career opportunity I can't pass up." Susan looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in 3 years. "Good for you," she said, and Clara could hear genuine surprise in her voice. "I hope it works out." As Clara walked away to begin her shift, she heard Susan mutter to another supervisor, "That's the quiet one, right? The one who keeps to herself?" Clara smiled. Yes, she had been the quiet one, the invisible one, the one who kept to herself because the world had taught her that was safer than being seen. But not anymore. The 3 weeks between accepting the position and the fundraising event passed in a blur of orientation meetings, paperwork, and planning sessions. Clara's first day at the Westbridge Foundation office felt surreal. Walking into a professional workspace where she had her own desk, her own computer, her own nameplate that read, Clara Martinez, Community Arts Director. Her office was small but bright, with a window overlooking 42nd Street. Nothing fancy, but worlds away from supply closets and service corridors. Jennifer, Leonard's assistant, had left a welcome basket on her desk filled with office supplies, snacks, and a card signed by the entire foundation staff. "We're so excited to have you here," the card read. "Your voice is exactly what we need." Clara's team consisted of 2 people. Marcus, a 26-year-old program coordinator with a background in nonprofit management, and Diane, a 50-something former teacher who knew every school principal and community leader in the 5 boroughs. Both had been briefed on Clara's hiring, and both, to her relief, seemed genuinely enthusiastic about working with her. "I heard your performance at the gala," Marcus said during their first team meeting. "My cousin works catering. He sent me a video someone recorded. It was incredible. Gave me actual chills." "There's a video?" Clara felt her stomach drop. Several, actually, Marcus said, then noticed her expression. Oh, don't worry, they're all positive. One of them has like 50,000 views on social media. People are calling you the mystery singer because nobody knew who you were. Clara didn't know how to feel about that. The idea of 50,000 strangers watching her most vulnerable moment was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Diane, practical as always, steered the conversation back to work. Let's talk about the program structure. Leonard mentioned you have ideas about what these kids need. Clara took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where she had to prove she belonged in this role. I do. I've been thinking a lot about my own experience with music. It wasn't just about learning to sing or play an instrument. It was about having a space where I mattered, where my voice, literally and figuratively, was valued. She stood and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker with slightly trembling hands. So many programs focus on creating professional musicians. That's great, but it's not realistic for most kids. What if instead we focused on creating confident humans who happen to use music as their tool for self-expression? As she talked, outlining her vision for community-based workshops, performance opportunities, and mentorship programs, Clara felt something shifting inside her. This was her voice too, not singing but speaking with authority about something she understood deeply. Marcus and Diane were nodding, taking notes, asking thoughtful questions. They weren't humoring her or tolerating her presence. They were actually listening. This is solid, Diane said when Clara finished. Really solid. I can already think of 5 schools that would jump at this opportunity. Over the following weeks, they built the program from the ground up. Clara visited schools in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, talking with music teachers and students. She was nervous at first, worried the kids would see through her, would recognize her as someone who didn't really belong in a leadership position. But something unexpected happened. The kids responded to her, maybe because she didn't talk down to them, maybe because she was honest about her own struggles. When a 14-year-old girl in Harlem asked Clara why she should trust this program, wasn't just another empty promise from wealthy people trying to feel good about themselves. Clara didn't give a polished answer. I don't know if you should trust it yet, Clara said honestly. Trust is earned, not given. What I can tell you is that I'm not doing this to feel good about myself. I'm doing this because I know what it's like to have a gift that the world tells you doesn't matter because of where you come from or what you look like, and I'm tired of that being true. The girl, her name was Destiny, studied Clara for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, I'll give it a shot. By the end of the second week, Clara had recruited 32 students for the pilot program. Each one had a story. Each one carried dreams that the world had taught them to keep small. But through all the excitement and progress, Clara couldn't shake the anxiety about the upcoming fundraising event. It loomed over everything like a storm cloud. Leonard had arranged for her to work with a vocal coach for 2 sessions, just to shake off the rust and prepare properly. The coach, a woman named Patricia who had performed on Broadway, was encouraging but honest. You have a stunning instrument, Patricia told her after their first session, but you're singing like you're afraid someone's going to take it away from you. You need to trust your voice, own it completely. That's easier said than done, Clara admitted. I know, but here's the thing. When you sang Hallelujah at that gala, you weren't thinking about technique or whether people would judge you. You were just feeling the music and letting it flow through you. That's what made it powerful. That's what you need to recapture. The night before the fundraising event, Clara couldn't sleep again. She had chosen her song, Somewhere, from West Side Story. It felt appropriate, a song about hope and longing for a better place. But now, lying in bed at midnight, she wondered if she had made the right choice. Her phone buzzed. A text from Leonard. Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling about tomorrow? Clara stared at the message for a moment before responding. Terrified. Excited. Mostly terrified. The reply came quickly. That means you care. That means it matters. You're going to be wonderful. Trust me. Another text followed. Also, I wanted you to know, I'm proud of the work you've done these past 3 weeks. You've exceeded every expectation. Regardless of how tomorrow goes, you've already proven you belong here. Clara felt tears welling up. She typed back, thank you. That means more than you know. She set her phone down and finally drifted into uneasy sleep. The fundraising event was held at a boutique hotel in Soho, in a renovated ballroom that managed to feel both elegant and intimate. When Clara arrived 2 hours early, Leonard was already there, overseeing final preparations. He looked different tonight, less the formal businessman and more approachable. His suit was impeccably tailored but in a softer gray, and his expression, when he saw Clara, was genuinely warm. "You look beautiful," he said, and Clara felt herself blush. She had splurged on a new dress for the occasion, deep burgundy, simple but well-made, that actually fit her properly. Maria had helped her with makeup and hair, transforming her usual practical ponytail into soft waves. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," Clara admitted. "You're not playing anything, you're just being yourself in different clothes." Leonard guided her toward the stage area, where a piano and microphone were set up. "The pianist is excellent, I've worked with him before. He has the sheet music you sent over. Do you want to do a quick sound check?" Clara nodded, her throat suddenly tight. As she stepped onto the small stage, the empty room seemed enormous. In a few hours, it would be filled with people who had donated thousands of dollars to be here. People who would be evaluating whether their investment in this program, and in her, was worthwhile. The sound check helped calm her nerves slightly. The acoustics were good, the pianist was professional and encouraging, and by the time she sang through Somewhere once, her hands had stopped shaking quite so badly. "Beautiful," the pianist said when they finished. "You have a remarkable voice, Ms. Martinez. This is going to be special." As 6 o'clock approached, guests began arriving. Clara watched from a side room as they filtered in, dressed elegantly but less ostentatiously than at the gala. These were serious donors, Leonard had explained. People who wanted to understand where their money was going and whether it was making a real difference. Leonard had asked Clara to give a short speech before performing, explaining the music program and her vision for it. She had written and rewritten her remarks a dozen times, finally settling on something that felt honest, rather than polished. At 6:30, Leonard took the stage to welcome everyone. Clara watched him command the room effortlessly, his confidence something she both admired and envied. "Tonight is about possibility," Leonard was saying. "About investing not just in programs, but in people, in voices that deserve to be heard. I'm going to introduce you to someone who embodies everything this foundation should represent: authenticity, courage, and extraordinary talent. Please welcome Clara Martinez." Clara walked onto the stage on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. 100 faces turned toward her, curious, evaluating. She reached the microphone and took a deep breath. "3 weeks ago," she began, her voice steadier than she felt, "I was cleaning floors at a charity gala when I made a comment that changed my life. I said that no one dances with a fat girl, but that I could sing to liven up the party." There was a rustling in the audience, surprise at her directness. "I said it because it was true, because I've spent most of my life being invisible to people like you, people with resources and education and opportunities. I was just part of the background, someone who existed to make your experiences more comfortable." Clara could see some uncomfortable shifting in seats, but she pressed on. "But Leonard heard me, not just the words, but what they meant, and he offered me a chance to become visible, to use my voice, literally and figuratively, to make a difference. The program we're building isn't just about teaching kids to sing. It's about teaching them that they matter, that their voices deserve to be heard, that they don't have to be invisible just because the world tells them they should be." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Some were nodding, some looked moved, some still looked skeptical. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this job. I don't have the credentials or the experience that would normally be required. What I have is the lived experience of being one of those invisible people, and I have a commitment to making sure the kids in our program never feel the way I felt, like they have to apologize for existing." She nodded to the pianist who began the gentle introduction to Somewhere, and then Clara sang. She sang for every kid who had been told they were too much or not enough. She sang for her mother, who had worked her fingers to the bone and still felt invisible. She sang for herself, for the girl who had given up her dreams to survive, and for the woman who was learning to dream again. When the final note faded, there was a moment of profound silence. Then the applause came, and it was different from the gala, quieter but somehow deeper. People weren't just impressed, they were moved. As Clara left the stage, Leonard met her at the stairs. His eyes were bright with emotion. "That was perfect," he said quietly. "Absolutely perfect." The rest of the evening passed in a daze. Donor after donor approached Clara, wanting to talk about the program, sharing their own stories of feeling invisible, pledging support. By 9 o'clock, Leonard announced they had exceeded their fundraising goal by 40%. "That's because of you," he told Clara as the event was winding down. your honesty, your courage. People don't give to polished presentations, they give to truth. As Clara finally sat down, exhausted but exhilarated, she realized something profound. She wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was becoming who she had always been meant to be. 6 months had transformed everything. Clara Martinez stood in the rehearsal room of the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center in the South Bronx, watching 32 teenagers run through their final practice before the showcase. The spring sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating faces that glowed with concentration and joy. These kids, from 5 different schools across 3 boroughs, had become more than students. They had become a community, a family bound by music and mutual support. From the top, Clara called out, and the pianist began the introduction to their opening number. The voices rose together, some strong and confident, others still finding their footing, but all of them earnest and authentic. This was what she had envisioned when she first sketched out the program 6 months ago. Not a training ground for professional musicians, but a space where young people could discover their worth through artistic expression. Clara moved through the room, her trained ear catching small mistakes that needed correction, but her heart swelling with pride at how far they had come. She wore jeans and a comfortable sweater, a far cry from the stiff cleaning uniform that had once defined her, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked different now, not because her body had changed, but because she carried herself differently, like someone who belonged in the spaces she occupied. "Destiny, beautiful phrasing on that bridge," Clara said as the song concluded. "But remember to save some power for the final chorus. You don't want to burn out before the big finish." Destiny Williams, the 14-year-old from Harlem who had initially questioned whether to trust this program, nodded seriously. She had grown at least 2 inches since September, but the real growth had been internal. The guarded, skeptical girl who had challenged Clara on that first school visit had blossomed into one of the program's natural leaders, encouraging the shyer students, organizing extra practice sessions, even starting a songwriting club. "Ms. Martinez?" A slight 16-year-old named Michael Chen approached hesitantly, clutching sheet music. "Could you look at this? I've been working on an original song, but I'm not sure if it's any good." Clara took the papers, her eyes scanning the lyrics Michael had written in careful handwriting. The song was about feeling caught between 2 cultures, his Chinese immigrant parents' expectations and his own American identity. It was raw, honest, and achingly vulnerable. "Michael, this is powerful," Clara said, meeting his eyes. "This is exactly the kind of authentic voice we need to hear. Would you be willing to perform it at the showcase?" Michael's eyes widened with fear and excitement in equal measure. "Really? You think people would want to hear it?" "I know they would. Your story matters. Your voice matters." Clara handed back the sheet music. "Think about it. You don't have to decide right now." As Michael walked away, clutching his song like a precious artifact, Clara felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Leonard Ashford standing behind her, a warm smile on his face. He had entered so quietly she hadn't noticed, which had become his habit during these site visits, observing without disrupting, supporting without controlling. "They sound incredible," Leonard said as they stepped into the hallway to talk privately. "They're getting there," Clara replied, though her pride was evident. "Some of them couldn't even introduce themselves without staring at the floor when we started. Now they're performing solos and writing original material." Leonard leaned against the wall, his expression thoughtful. Over the past 6 months, their professional relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated. A genuine friendship built on mutual respect, shared values, and a commitment to creating meaningful change. Clara had learned that beneath Leonard's intimidating exterior was a man genuinely struggling to use his privilege for good, constantly questioning whether he was doing enough, doing it right. "I have some news," Leonard said. "The board met yesterday. They've approved a major expansion of the program." Clara's heart rate quickened. "What kind of expansion?" "Citywide. All 5 boroughs, 50 schools, starting next fall. We're committing $5 million over the next 3 years." He paused, watching her reaction. "And Clara, they want you to lead the entire initiative, not just as a program director, but as associate director of the foundation, overseeing all our arts education efforts." Clara felt dizzy. Leonard, that's enormous. I've only been doing this for 6 months. And in those 6 months, you've proven that authenticity and lived experience matter more than decades of traditional credentials." The board was unanimous. They've seen the data, attendance rates, student confidence assessments, community feedback. But more than that, they've seen the students themselves. They've watched kids transform. Clara walked to the window, looking out at the street below where a group of younger children played basketball in the spring sunshine. A year ago, she had been invisible. She had moved through the world like a ghost, cleaning up after people who never saw her as fully human. Now she was being offered the opportunity to shape the lives of thousands of young people across New York City. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "What if I fail? What if I can't scale this up? What if you succeed beyond your wildest dreams?" Leonard interrupted gently. "Clara, fear is reasonable, but you've already done the hardest part. You've proven the model works. Now it's about replication and support, and we'll give you everything you need. Staff, resources, training." Clara turned back to face him. "Why do you believe in me so much? Really?" Leonard was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer carefully. "Because you understand something that I spent 50 years of my life not understanding. That people's worth isn't determined by their economic status or their appearance or their credentials. You see people, really see them, and that quality is infinitely more valuable than any MBA or decades of experience." He pushed off from the wall, standing straighter. "But also selfishly, because working with you has changed me. You've made me uncomfortable in the best way possible. You've forced me to examine my own complicity in systems that make people invisible, and I'm a better person for it." Before Clara could respond, the rehearsal room door opened, and Destiny emerged. "Ms. Martinez, we're ready to run through the finale whenever you are." Clara nodded, then looked back at Leonard. "I'll think about the position, but right now I have a showcase to prepare for." "That's all I ask," Leonard said. "Just think about it." The evening of the showcase arrived with perfect spring weather, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming trees. The community center's auditorium filled early, parents and siblings and neighbors claiming seats, their faces bright with anticipation. Clara stood backstage, running through last-minute details with Marcus and Diane. Her team had grown to 5 people now, and they had become remarkably efficient at organizing these events. But Clara still felt the familiar flutter of nerves, not for herself but for her students who were about to put themselves on display in the most vulnerable way possible. "You've got this," Diane said, squeezing Clara's shoulder. "They've got this. Trust the work you've done." At 7 o'clock, the lights dimmed and Leonard took the stage to welcome the audience. Clara watched from the wings, noting how comfortable he had become in these community spaces. 6 months ago, he would have given a polished speech that maintained professional distance. Now he spoke with genuine warmth and connection. 6 months ago, we launched this program with a simple but profound question. What happens when we give young people the tools and permission to find their voices? Tonight, you'll hear the answer. But more importantly, you'll witness the courage it takes to be seen and heard in a world that often tells certain people they should stay quiet and invisible. He gestured toward the wings where Clara stood. "This program exists because one woman had the courage to speak up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Clara Martinez, would you join me?" Clara walked onto the stage to warm applause. She wore a new dress, deep blue, elegant but not ostentatious, and her confidence, while still fragile in moments, had grown considerably. She took the microphone Leonard offered. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice steady. "What you're about to witness is more than just a concert. It's a testament to what becomes possible when young people are given space to be authentic, to take risks, to claim their worth through artistic expression." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, mostly brown and black, mostly working class, mostly people who understood what it meant to be overlooked by society. These students have worked incredibly hard, but more than that, they've been brave. They've chosen to be visible in a world that often prefers they stay hidden. So please give them your attention, your encouragement, and your celebration. The showcase began with a group number, all 32 students on stage, their voices blending in harmony. Some parents were already wiping tears, overwhelmed by seeing their children shine in this way. The song was an upbeat arrangement of "Lean on Me," and the irony wasn't lost on Clara. These students had learned to lean on each other, to support rather than compete, to lift each other up. Individual performances followed. A shy 13-year-old named Aliyah sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" with such pure emotion that the audience fell completely silent. Twin brothers from Queens performed a rap they had written about their immigrant father's journey from Mexico, and the audience erupted in appreciation. A 17-year-old named Jasmine, who had confided in Clara about struggling with anxiety, performed a jazz standard with such confidence that Clara felt her eyes well up with proud tears. Then came Destiny's moment. She walked onto the stage with her head high, her natural hair styled in beautiful twists. Wearing a dress her mother had made especially for this night, the audience quieted immediately, sensing something special was about to happen. Destiny sang Rise Up by Andra Day, and from the first note the room was transfixed. Her voice, rich, powerful, undeniable, filled every corner of the auditorium. But it wasn't just technical skill that made the performance extraordinary. It was the complete authenticity with which she inhabited the song. She sang like someone who had risen up from doubt and fear, who had claimed her space in the world despite every message telling her she wasn't enough. When she hit the final soaring note, holding it with perfect control before releasing it gently into silence, the audience leaped to their feet. The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes, and Destiny stood on that stage, tears streaming down her face, absorbing the love and recognition that she had earned. Clara, watching from the wings, felt her own tears falling freely. This was why she had taken the risk. This was why she had chosen to be visible despite her fear. Because moments like this, moments where young people recognize their own power, were worth everything. Michael Chen performed his original song about cultural identity, his voice shaking at first but growing stronger with each verse. His parents, sitting in the third row, held hands and wept openly. After he finished, his father stood and applauded, his face shining with pride, and perhaps a new understanding of his son's experience. The showcase concluded with Clara joining her students on stage for a final group number, This Little Light of Mine, arranged as a gospel-style celebration. 32 student voices and 1 teacher's voice blended together, and the message was unmistakable. Their lights would not be hidden, not anymore. After the showcase, as families mingled in the lobby and students basked in their success, Leonard found Clara in a quiet corner. She was exhausted but radiant, her face glowing with satisfaction. "So?" he asked. "Have you thought about the position?" Clara smiled. "I have, and my answer is yes, but on one condition." "Name it." "We hire at least 3 more people from non-traditional backgrounds, people who have lived experience in the communities we serve. I don't want this expansion to become another thing run by people who've never experienced what these kids experience daily." Leonard extended his hand. "Deal." "Absolutely deal." As they shook hands, Clara felt the weight and promise of what lay ahead. 50 schools, thousands of students, a chance to create systemic change rather than just individual impact. It was overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. But right now, in this moment, she allowed herself to simply be present, to watch her students celebrate with their families, to accept congratulations from community members who had seen something special tonight, to exist fully in this space she had created. Destiny approached, her mother beside her. "Ms. Martinez, this is my mom, Sandra." Sandra Williams took Clara's hands in both of hers. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for seeing my daughter, for believing in her. You've changed her life." "She changed her own life," Clara said gently. "I just gave her permission to shine." "That's everything," Sandra replied. "Sometimes that's all we need. Someone to tell us we're allowed to take up space." As the evening wound down and the community center gradually emptied, Clara stood alone in the auditorium for a moment. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, invisible, exhausted, resigned to a life of simply surviving. She thought about her mother, Rosa, who had worked herself to exhaustion and still felt like she wasn't enough. "I did it, Mama," Clara whispered to the empty seats. "I found my voice, and I'm helping others find theirs. You'd be so proud." She could almost hear her mother's response. "I was always proud, mija. Always." Clara turned off the lights and walked out into the spring evening. The city was alive with its usual chaos, sirens and car horns and the rumble of the subway beneath the streets. But tonight, it all sounded like music, like possibility, like proof that one voice, raised in courage, could start a symphony. Tomorrow there would be more work to do, more students to inspire, more barriers to break down, more people to help become visible. But tonight, Clara allowed herself to simply be proud. Proud of how far she had come. Proud of the lives she was touching. Proud of the woman she was becoming. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer silent. She was undeniable. And her voice, along with all the voices she was helping to amplify, would continue echoing through classrooms and community centers, through concerts and conversations, creating ripples that would reach further than she could ever imagine. The song had just begun, and it would be heard.